"Do you take cash?" The question was small, barely a whisper cutting through the hushed elegance of the Golden Spoon, a restaurant where the average wine list cost more than a month's rent in the city's grittier districts. The voice belonged to a girl who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Her name was Eliza. She stood just inside the arched doorway, framed by the towering, velvet-draped entrance, a tiny silhouette against the glow of the metropolitan streetlights. The air inside smelled of truffles, aged leather, and power. She wore a hand-me-down coat that was too thin and too large, its fabric dull and stained against the polished marble floor. Her gaze, however, was not timid, it was intense, darting around the room with the practiced vigilance of a stray. She was not begging, she was a customer, albeit one entirely out of place, an unflattering smudge on the restaurant's immaculate canvas. The maitre d', a man named Victor, whose every gesture was calibrated for maximum sophistication, paused mid-sweep of his immaculate jacket, his carefully constructed composure momentarily cracked by the sheer, bewildering audacity of her presence. The question hung in the air, what was this child doing here? The dining room froze. The low murmur of self-important conversation, the clinking of silverware on imported china, all of it ceased, replaced by a brittle, collective silence. Diners, mostly wealthy couples and hedge fund types, turned their heads, their expressions ranging from mild annoyance to detached, anthropological curiosity. A woman at a nearby table, dripping in diamonds, instinctively pulled her designer handbag closer. The sheer contrast was a physical thing, the girl's threadbare existence juxtaposed with the room's decadent opulence. Victor recovered first, his practiced sneer snapping back into place. He moved toward Eliza with the measured pace of an officer approaching a minor disturbance. His eyes, cold and assessing, swept over her worn sneakers and the coat that seemed to absorb the light. This was not a misplaced child, this was a problem, a violation of the establishment's unspoken decorum. He was about to usher her out, perhaps offer a condescending $5 bill to smooth the wrinkle, when Eliza took one deliberate step further inside, her small boots crunching ever so slightly on a stray piece of bread that had fallen from a nearby table. This simple movement signaled that she wasn't leaving, and it drew the attention of Detective Marcus Thorne, who was dining discreetly in a corner booth, officially off-duty, but perpetually on high alert. The detective, a man hardened by years in the city's grim underbelly, found his apathy dissolving into a prickling sense of unease. Something in the girl's eyes wasn't desperation, it was a desperate, calculated move. Victor leaned down, his voice a low, warning hiss. "Little one, you need to leave. This is a private establishment." Eliza didn't flinch. Her eyes, the color of storm clouds, locked onto his. "I have money," she repeated, her voice clearer now. She reached into the single, deep pocket of her coat. Every head in the room strained to see, anticipating a few crumpled bills, maybe a handful of change. Instead, she pulled out a worn, heavy silver locket on a tarnished chain. It was an antique, clearly valuable, but it was the way she held it, cupped in her small, trembling hand like a fragile secret, that truly gave pause. She pushed the locket toward Victor, a desperate offer. "Please. I need one meal. The biggest one you have." Detective Thorne, watching from his booth, saw the glint of the silver in the girl's frantic, almost paranoid demeanor. He recognized the look, survival mode. "Where are you running from, kid?" Thorne muttered to himself. Victor, momentarily thrown by the locket's obvious worth, hesitated. "Where did you get this?" Eliza took a shallow, shaky breath, her small chest rising and falling quickly. "It was my mother's. I need to buy time." She spoke the last 3 words under her breath, a confession meant only for herself, but Thorne heard them. He knew those words meant she wasn't just hungry, she was hiding. The locket was not payment for food, it was a pawn for sanctuary. The mystery deepened, a child, a high-value antique, and a plea for time inside the most expensive restaurant in the city. The tension in the room shifted from awkwardness to genuine, dark curiosity. The silver locket, a family heirloom, felt cold and heavy in her palm, a promise of temporary safety, but a stark reminder of the danger shadowing her every move. Before Victor could reject the locket or call security, a sleek, black sedan, an unmarked, expensive vehicle, slid silently to a stop right outside the gilded entrance, its tinted windows reflecting the restaurant's warm light like two black, unblinking eyes. The sight of it sent a visible shudder through Eliza. She didn't have to turn to know who it was. The sense of imminent danger, an invisible but palpable wave of dread, washed over the room. Two men emerged from the car, large, impeccably dressed, and utterly menacing, their movements too fluid, too coordinated for casual visitors. They were not merely looking for someone, they were hunting. Eliza's voice dropped to a frantic plea. "They're here. The bad men. They want the locket." "And what's inside it?" Detective Thorne pushed his chair back, the harsh scrape on the marble floor cutting through the sudden silence. He was off duty, but the sight of the men, who carried the undeniable air of professional enforcers, not simple thugs, and the girl's terror, sealed his involvement. Victor and the other diners, their initial curiosity curdled into genuine fear, were paralyzed. The group was forced to make the agonizing choice: ignore the child and let the darkness consume her, or stand in the way of a clear, immediate threat. Thorne spoke, his voice low and commanding, an unmistakable sound of authority. "Don't look at them. Victor, get the girl into the kitchen. Now. Move." But Eliza didn't move toward the kitchen. Instead, she did the only thing a cornered animal could do. She turned, faced the approaching danger, and in a final, defiant act of desperation, she screamed, "They killed my dad. And they're going to kill me." The men paused, 1 foot inside the restaurant door, their eyes narrowing. The confrontation was now inevitable, and the line had been drawn. The choice was gone. The simple act of ordering a meal had turned into a desperate stand. The hunters were at the door, and the fragile sanctuary of the Golden Spoon was about to shatter. The two enforcers, their names were Silas and Marco, stepped fully into the light. Their presence was a cold, hard shock of reality against the restaurant's artificial warmth. Silas, the leader, his face a mask of smooth, ruthless composure, looked directly at Eliza. "The locket, little bird. Give it to us, and we leave. No more fuss." Eliza stood her ground, her small body trembling but her chin held high. Detective Thorne moved quickly, interposing his body between the men and the girl, his hand resting conspicuously on the small of his back, a clear signal of his weapon. "Police. Back away." Silas merely scoffed. "A little off-duty protection, detective? We're just retrieving stolen property." The tension was suffocating. Eliza, realizing the confrontation was about the locket and what it symbolized, made her move. It was an act of raw, stunning courage. She didn't hand it over, instead, she opened the locket. Inside, nestled beneath the glass, was not a picture, but a tiny, folded slip of paper. She didn't show it to the men. Instead, she yelled to the room, her voice cracking with the strain of her terror and defiance. "This isn't a picture. It's the key. It's a bank account number. My dad's money. They want to steal it." The men's controlled expressions finally fractured. Silas lunged. Thorne reacted instantly, a blur of practiced defense, knocking the man off balance. The ensuing seconds were a chaotic, intense flash, a brief, visceral struggle in the midst of crystal and champagne. Marco tried to grab Eliza, but Victor, the self-important maitre d', found a sudden, heroic surge of adrenaline. He slammed a heavy silver serving tray into Marco's side, a surprisingly effective, desperate defense. The fight was short, intense, and public. The sight of the little girl, who had just exposed a multi-million-dollar inheritance theft in a room full of the city's elite, was the decisive blow. The noise, the shock, and the presence of an armed, if off-duty, detective were enough. The police sirens, called by a quick-thinking waiter, were now audible and closing fast. Silas and Marco, professionals who avoided publicity above all else, broke off the confrontation. They bolted, disappearing out the door and into the black sedan, which sped away into the night, leaving a trail of shattered glass and stunned silence. The immediate threat was gone, defeated not by brute force, but by the shattering courage of a 10-year-old girl and the sudden, clumsy bravery of strangers. The police arrived, a chaotic swirl of flashing blue and red light that washed over the formerly tranquil restaurant. Statements were taken, the broken glass swept up, and the diners slowly, soberly, began to process the reality of what they had witnessed, a small act of tremendous evil thwarted by a small act of tremendous bravery. Eliza, now physically safe, was escorted out of the chaos by Thorne, who had instantly shifted from detective to protector. The immediate threat, the men, were gone for now, but the larger problem remained, stark and crushing. She stood outside, the cold night air hitting her face, the crumpled slip of paper from a locket now securely tucked into Thorne's wallet. The financial proof of the crime was safe. But the girl was not just an heir, she was an orphan, a witness, and a child with nowhere to go. A uniformed officer approached. "We'll take her to Child Services, Detective." "It's protocol." Thorne looked at Eliza, whose earlier defiance was replaced by the hollow, bone-deep fatigue of a child who has been running too long. He looked at the vast, impersonal city stretching out before them, and the cold, institutional solution awaiting her. He remembered her face as she screamed the truth in the middle of a high-end restaurant. "No," he said, his voice firm. "Not tonight. We've got a murder investigation. I'm her next of kin for the next 24 hours. She stays with me." The victory had been won, but the real journey had just begun. The question hung over them, heavy and uncertain. Now that she was safe from the villains, how could they save her from the system? The quiet of the patrol car was a stark contrast to the chaos. The fight was over, but a new, larger one, the fight for a home, was just beginning. Thorne lived a solitary, functional life, a Spartan apartment filled with evidence files and cheap coffee. The sudden, absolute presence of a 10-year-old girl was a seismic shift. Eliza, exhausted, was quiet, but her terror manifested in small, sharp ways. She flinched at loud noises, she slept curled up on the edge of the couch, and she ate her single, promised restaurant meal, a bowl of surprisingly good soup Victor had discreetly sent over, with a speed that spoke of chronic hunger, not appetite. Thorne, the hardened, cynical detective, was forced to confront an entirely new kind of case, domesticity. He didn't know how to do this. He bought her a toothbrush, a massive pile of cheap, oversized clothes, and a teddy bear that she eyed with suspicion before finally pulling close in the dark. The initial 24 hours stretched. Thorne realized he couldn't simply drop her off. He brought in two unexpected allies, Victor, the maitre d', who felt an obligation to the girl whose bravery had shaken him, and Dr. Lena Reyes, a compassionate trauma therapist he knew from a previous case. Victor, with his immaculate taste, began bringing over tailored children's clothes and books on etiquette, teaching her how to hold a fork properly, a small, grounding ritual. Lena, meanwhile, worked through the nightmares. She discovered that Eliza had witnessed her father's murder, orchestrated by Silas and Marco, over the discovery of the secret bank account. The trauma was deep, but her intelligence was sharper. The improbable group, the gritty cop, the fastidious maitre d', and the empathetic therapist, formed a fragile, unconventional network. Thorne learned to cook something other than canned chili. Victor learned that not all elegance is on a plate. Lena taught them all how to simply be gentle. Eliza slowly began to talk, to laugh, and, most miraculously, to sleep soundly. They were an imperfect family, bound together by a moment of fear and a shared commitment to a life that had been violently interrupted. The true transformation wasn't Eliza's, but theirs, the discovery that love, messy and unscripted, could exist outside the lines of their rigid lives. The cop's apartment, once a sterile fortress of solitude, began to accumulate the small, unmistakable debris of childhood, a crayon drawing on the fridge, a discarded shoe, the faint, comforting scent of hot cocoa. The tranquility was short-lived. The system came calling. Social services, armed with an impartial concern for Eliza's long-term welfare, initiated proceedings. Judge Eleanor Vance, a woman known for her strict adherence to protocol, presided over the custody hearing. The arguments were brutal. The state's attorney painted Thorne as an unsuitable guardian, a single, career-driven police officer with an unpredictable schedule, no family structure, and a demonstrable history of involving himself in violent, high-risk situations. Victor's flamboyant lifestyle and Lena's status as a professional rather than a relative were picked apart as circumstantial. The system demanded stability, tradition, and verifiable, predictable care. The moral debate hinged on an impossible question: which was more dangerous, the instability of an unconventional, sudden love, or the cold, predictable safety of the foster system. Thorne, normally eloquent under pressure, struggled. He had no forms, no long-term plans, just a fierce, protective certainty. "I don't have a perfect home, Your Honor," he argued, his voice raw. "But I have a safe home. She chose us. She fought for her life, and we fought with her. That's a bond stronger than any paperwork." It wasn't enough. Judge Vance was about to rule in favor of the state when, in a small, deliberate act that mirrored her earlier defiance in the restaurant, Eliza rose to speak. She didn't cry or plead. She simply told the truth, her voice quiet but ringing with absolute clarity. "They say Detective Thorne is too busy. They say Victor is too fancy. They say Lena is just a doctor," she stated, looking directly at the judge. "But when the bad men came, and everyone else hid, these people stood up. They didn't have to. They are not my blood. They are my safe. The locket was worth money, but they taught me I am worth more than the money. I finally stopped being scared of the dark, because they are in the dark with me. Don't send me away. I don't need a perfect family. I need this family." Her small, powerful testimony cut through the legal rhetoric, laying bare the truth. The law was meant to protect the child, and sometimes, the people who actually protect the child look nothing like the law expects. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of a child's simple, unvarnished truth settling over the sterile procedures. The system, designed for order, was momentarily shattered by the messy reality of love. Judge Vance looked from the girl to the three adults, the detective, the maitre d', the therapist, who were openly emotional, their professional facades melted away. She slammed her gavel down, the sound echoing the finality of her decision. Custody granted to Mr. Thorne, with mandated support and therapeutic integration provided by Dr. Reyes and Mr. Dubois, Victor. It was an unconventional ruling, a creative bending of the rules to accommodate a profound truth. The bond, forged in a moment of violence and crystallized by shared sacrifice, was recognized as valid. Outside the courtroom, the unconventional family collapsed into a single, joyous, tearful embrace. Eliza didn't just have a guardian, she had a network. Thorne was her legal father, Lena, her therapist and emotional guide, and Victor, her eccentric uncle, teaching her that one could be both elegant and a warrior. They returned to Thorne's apartment. It wasn't the gilded cage of the Golden Spoon, nor was it the cold steel of the courtroom, but a home, warm and real, smelling of pizza and the lingering scent of Victor's high-end cologne. They were a complete, if improbable, unit. Eliza finally felt the relief of a battle won, not just survived. The locket, its purpose fulfilled, was now a simple necklace, a memory of her father and her own courage. The paper was signed. The fight with the villains, the fight with the system, it was all over. A new, fragile beginning was granted, built on the foundations of a chance encounter in a restaurant. 5 years later. The city had changed, and so had they. Eliza, now 15, was no longer the small, fearful girl with the locket. She was a poised, articulate young woman, academically brilliant, with a dry wit inherited from Thorne and a sharp sense of style subtly guided by Victor. Thorne, now a lieutenant, had kept his edge but softened around the corners, his home life a grounding anchor. Victor had finally opened his own restaurant, a more casual but still elegant spot named The Locket, with a specific mission: no child was ever turned away, and a small fund was established to feed children in need. Lena continued her practice, now specializing in the complexities of non-traditional family trauma, using Eliza's case as a powerful example of resilience. The revelation of the stolen inheritance had led to a wider corruption scandal, a slow but steady push toward justice that had finally seen Silas and Marco arrested. Eliza's testimony, 5 years prior, had been the thread that unraveled the whole tapestry of greed. On her graduation from middle school, Eliza gave a short speech. She looked at her three guardians, Thorne, Victor, and Lena, in the front row. 5 years ago, she said, her voice clear and strong, I was looking for a meal, and I found a family. The world is a loud, scary place, and sometimes, the safest thing is what you have to hide. But I learned that the greatest things are not hidden in your pocket. They are given freely, at the moment of your greatest need, by the people who choose you. She founded a small nonprofit that day, the Pocket Fund, named after the coat that once held her secret. It was a network of chefs, social workers, and police officers dedicated to offering immediate, confidential sanctuary to children in crisis. It was a reminder that an act of kindness in a moment of fear can ripple out into a lifetime of change. The entire experience was a testament to one simple, profound truth: sometimes, the greatest fortune isn't what you stand to inherit, but the unexpected family you find when you have nothing left to lose.